Red Face Army.
"22-year-old Tyler Robinson, a local Utah resident and former UVU student, was arrested on September 12th after a 33-hour manhunt. He was turned in by family members who became suspicious after overhearing conversations about Kirk spreading hate. This concept of seeing Charlie Kirk as an evil person is promulgated by university professors who follow Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy to radicalize students, who are further fed this idea through media and the Democratic Party. All of them are complicit in this crime. Robinson faces charges of aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury. Authorities believe he acted alone, motivated by ideological opposition to Kirk's views based on Discord messages and family statements. I don't think he acted alone because he asked people help retrieving the weapon. And the fact he was openly talking about his actions in Discord makes me believe there are co-conspirators. The weapon was recovered hidden in bushes near campus. In the quiet suburbs of Illinois, where cornfields whispered under endless skies, a young man named Charlie Kirk knelt in prayer one autumn evening in 2012. At just 18, he felt a fire stirring not from the chill wind, but from a deeper call. God, family, country, in that order, he would later say, echoing the biblical truths that anchored his soul. Faith in Christ wasn't a footnote for Charlie. It was the compass for his every step. That night, inspired by the resurrection of Jesus, a fact of history, it really happened. Jesus rose from the dead. As he often proclaimed, he founded Turning Point USA. It began as a spark on American college campuses, a movement to awaken young hearts to conservative values rooted not in fleeting trends, but in eternal principles. Charlie's voice soon echoed beyond the lecture halls. At rallies and podcasts, he wove politics with the gospel, arguing that true freedom flowed from divine order. When somebody walks around and thinks that you were created and that you're not God, you tend to have better citizens, he declared in a 2025 interview, reminding listeners that humility before the Creator bred responsibility in society. His critiques of secularism cut deep. There is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication. It's a fiction. It's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists. This wasn't mere rhetoric. It was a crusade. Through Turning Point, he mobilized thousands, turning dorm rooms into hubs of debate where faith fueled activism against what he saw as moral decay. Word spread like wildfire across oceans. In Europe, where ancient cathedrals stood shadowed by modern doubt, Turning Point chapters bloomed in cities like London and Berlin. Charlie's message, Jesus defeated death so you can live, shared boldly on social media, ignited a youth revival. Gen Z, adrift in a sea of relativism, flocked to his events, drawn by the unapologetic blend of patriotism and piety. There is revival in the Christian church. Churches are growing. Young people are flocking to faith in God, he tweeted in September 2025, celebrating the tide turning worldwide. From Australian campuses to Brazilian youth forums, his influence rippled, inspiring a global youth movement that swept nations, as he described it, a force sweeping the world. Yet Charlie knew the cost. No civilization has ever collapsed because it prays too much. But a civilization that abandons God will deteriorate, he warned in one of his final posts. His life ended tragically on a Utah campus that September, but his legacy endured. I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important. The most important thing is my faith, he had confided months earlier. In death, as in life, Charlie's Christ-centered vision proved timeless, touching souls from Chicago to Cape Town, proving that true influence transcends borders when guided by the divine. Tyler Robinson highlights the dangerous influence of Paulo Freire's Marxist-based critical pedagogy in radicalizing university students toward the far left. Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed promotes a binary oppressor-oppressed framework, encouraging students to view societal structures and their defenders as inherently oppressive, fostering activism over nuanced dialogue. This approach, prevalent in U.S. academia, contributed to Robinson's rapidly morph from a conservative Mormon from a Republican household to an Antifa-aligned extremist who viewed Kirk as a fascist deserving of death. In just 2 years at university, amplified by online far-left spaces, he adopted a worldview that demonized conservatives. Unlike the right, which often sees the left as merely wrong, the left steeped in Freirean rhetoric labels conservatives as evil, using terms like hate, Nazi, or transphobic to shut down debate and portray opponents as existential threats. This dehumanization, evident in Robinson's bullet casings inscribed with "Hey Fascist" catch and Antifa references, eliminates space for civil discourse, justifying violence as a means to eradicate dangers to society. Post-assassination social media chants targeting figures like Trump and Shapiro further reflect this mindset. Robinson's case, radicalized in 2 years, demonstrates how Freire's pedagogy, when applied without balance, can turn disagreement into deadly enmity. Reforming academic approaches to prioritize open dialogue over ideological binaries is critical to preventing further tragedies. Paulo Freire's work. Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed 1968 draws heavily on Marxist ideas, framing society as a struggle between oppressors, for example, elites, capitalists, and the oppressed, for example, working class, marginalized groups. His critical pedagogy encourages students to question societal structures through dialogue, aiming to awaken critical consciousness about systemic injustices. Critics argue this approach oversimplifies complexity. By emphasizing a binary of oppressor versus oppressed, it can reduce nuanced issues to a zero-sum conflict, leaving little room for gray areas where most people's experiences and disagreements reside. This can discourage mutual understanding, dehumanizes disagreement, labeling those who uphold existing systems, for example, conservatives, capitalists, as oppressors, risks framing them as inherently evil, rather than individuals with differing views. This can escalate ideological opponents into existential enemies, as you noted. Radicalization potential. When students internalize this worldview, particularly in academic settings where Freire's ideas influence curricula, for example, education, sociology, it can foster resentment or militancy, especially among those already drawn to activism. Critics on platforms like X often call this indoctrination, claiming it primes students to see violence as a justifiable response to perceived moral evils.